My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to do a recap on the 2020, although I know it's 2021, the Tokyo Olympics. So let's do a recap on that. And I also want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of that. Now, Charles Dickens, a long time ago, in A Tale of Two Cities, wrote, "It is the best of times and it's the worst of times." And I agree with that, especially when it comes to the Olympics and the way our culture is going. So let's talk about the best of times right up front. And we can't deny this. Well, first of all, I can't. I love the Olympics. It was like the last 17 days. It's winding down now. And I have to say I feel a little bit sad. And I always feel sad when the Olympics come to an end. Because I love wall-to-wall, 24-hour-a-day, pretty much, sports and the best competition that you could see. I don't love all the sports, but I love competitors and I love the work that goes into it. Of course, I'm from the United States, so I root for the United States. But I can also root for a really good story. And so I do root for a lot of the other competitors that are trying just as hard as everybody else. And I find myself, once again, just like I did when I was a kid, I get a little sad when it ends because it's only like every 4 years. So the best of times, no denying, these athletes are amazing. They're great, as evidenced by the amount of world records that were broken. I mean, whether it's swimming, track and field, you name it. I mean, these are the best of the best. And looking at competition is, and again, it's the Olympic Games. We have to remember that, games. And these things should be lifelong pursuits. And when you look at it, I think the youngest person in the Olympics this year was 12. That's amazing to be world class at 12. The oldest was 66. That's amazing. I think somebody else competed, there were 62. And there was a 46-year-old woman who competed in gymnastics. Now those are amazing role models. And I think we can look at their commitment and dedication and just be better in any area of life that we want to. I mean, again, that's certainly the best of times, and I love watching the Olympics. Worst of times. This has been the lowest rating for any Olympics ever. And unfortunately, it's very easily predicted because it's been skewing down for a while now. So there's been a very big disconnect between culture and watching the Olympics. There's a lot of reasons, though, too, why the ratings are coming down. We're going to talk about a few of those, and then I'm going to talk about maybe some solutions to that. Some of this talk is going to be a little bit difficult for people because we have to talk about the truth. And one of the reasons why the ratings are down in the United States is because the same types of people who support the attack on the Capitol building, the same types of people who are actively contributing to making the COVID-19 pandemic worse, the same types of people that can't seem to be okay with a free and fair election, they are now openly rooting against the United States. Or they're not watching at all. And that's beyond sad. The Olympics, again, I don't want to make it too political, but you have to. The Olympics have always been political. If we want to look at, we can go back to 1936. Jesse Owens in Berlin, Germany, competing for the United States, and Jesse Owens was black. And in the stands was Adolf Hitler and a bunch of people from the Third Reich. And they were staring, him down, thinking that, white supremacy and all that. So was that political? Of course. Ask somebody from Israel. The 1972 Munich Games, the Israeli team was killed. So yes, it's political. The United States has boycotted the Olympics due to political reasons. The Soviet Union has also bailed out because of political reasons throughout the past. So yes, it's definitely political. But to my knowledge, this is the first time that the United States has actually boycotted other athletes from the United States and are actively pursuing, trying to drive down the ratings in the Olympics and not give support to our American citizens. Cultural divide, cultural decline, absolutely. Sad to talk about it. What else has contributed to the decline in ratings? Well, it's been pointed out that there's a time difference between Tokyo, Japan, and the United States. That's obviously true, no doubt. But the Olympics have always been in different places all around the world. Actually, they've been in Tokyo before, I believe in 1964. Nobody ever complained that it was in a different place. So I think that that's a reason, but I don't think it's a viable reason to say whether ratings have gone down. There's too many channels, too many choices. Agreed, that's true, absolutely. But if you truly love the Olympics and you wanted to root on the performers in the United States, you would find that channel and you'd be on it in a second. So yes, there are more channels, more choices, but I don't think that's a viable reason for why the ratings have gone down. Unfortunately, we can't use that as an excuse. So what are the real reasons why the Olympics have lost popularity and why it's been totally predictable? Let's start with the basic core. People are more sedentary now. Through the 60s and 70s, actually earlier than that, but let's just take it from the 60s and 70s, through the 80s, sports were on the rise. All major sports. You can look at boxing, you can look at football, you can look at baseball, basketball, hockey, you name it. The running craze in the 1970s was amazing. Everybody was starting to buy a tracksuit and a new pair of sneakers, and that was a big deal. Everybody wanted to be in shape. So if you want to be in shape in your own personal life, and it's something you value, of course you're going to watch the world's best during the Olympics. You cared. It was a big thing. Now let's take bodybuilding, which is something that's near to me. Bodybuilding got huge in the 70s with pumping iron. It got massively big and went to everywhere in the 80s. Every musician was affected by it. All musicians, not all, but most musicians all of a sudden were in shape. Look at the people in Hollywood. Look at all the stars. You can look at Angela Bassett. You could look at Linda Hamilton. On the men's side, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude, Dolph Lundgren, Chuck Norris. You keep going. There's a million of them. They were all in shape. And if you like to watch people that are in shape and you go to movies and you listen to musicians that are in shape, why would you not be interested in the Olympics? Of course you would. It was culture, right? It was hard to find even anybody, that wasn't interested in at least going to aerobicize, some aerobics class, jazzercise, you name it. But what has happened since the 90s, somewhere in the 90s? Unfortunately, we've become very lazy. We've become mentally lazy, physically lazy. We've become obese. Listen, 66% of Americans are overweight. That's 2/3. 1/3 of Americans are obese, which is very overweight. And since the 90s, and it's been increasing like a snowball throughout the 90s up until now, because of the internet and social media, it's been entitlement, narcissism, the disease of comfort, people avoiding competition like the plague, parents trying to do too much, coddling their kids, helicoptering their kids, the same or maybe even worse yet, lawn mowing kids, where they try to buzz down every single type of challenge and adversity that a child can have, to the point where almost every kid experiences anxiety now because they don't know how to handle life. Very, very sad. We don't even want kids to work out, to train. Why? They might break a sweat. Oh my God, We don't want we don't want to say no to them when they want candy. Give them an apple. Oh, they whine, cry. Oh no, give them the candy instead. It's destroyed our culture in every which way. It's led to a disrespect of the mind-body-spirit connection. What has that done? It's led to a decline of youth sport participation, which leads to not caring about sports or general health. So if that's the way our society is, why would we want to watch the Olympics? We don't care, right? The great people in the Olympics are at a distance. Everybody else is way down here. They just don't care anymore. There's more. The increase in narcissism and entitlement. Also, what I would like to add to that is reality TV culture. It's making the role model obsolete. When I was young, we'd look up to Muhammad Ali, Reggie Jackson, Joe Namath, you name it. Why? Because they were amazing with what they did. Now, you get these kids and they take a picture of their food and they go, what an achievement, I'm eating lunch. It's ridiculous. There's people that, let's say, for instance, they don't wear much clothes on Instagram, and they get a bunch of followers. They have no talent, but they think they have talent. Back in the day, you can get a lot of stars, right? And they were singers, they were writers, they were dancers, they were actors and actresses. They actually had a lot of talent. They had to study for years to be good. Now, all you have to do is just post a couple of racy pictures on whatever, Facebook, Instagram, and everybody thinks that they're a model. Back in the day when I did modeling and I was in some of the biggest magazines in the world, they actually called me, and I had to go into Manhattan, New York City. I had to be interviewed by a lot of people. Then I had to see if I passed the test to see if I was good enough and I had enough appeal for people. Now, it doesn't matter. Everybody thinks they're famous. A bunch of years ago, I was having this talk with this one guy. I thought he was so great. And he's like, oh, but I sell my calendars. I'm like, yeah, but you made your own calendars. How narcissistic is that? When I was in calendars, it was because somebody from a big company paid me. It's not the same anymore. Everybody thinks that they're a star. And here's the problem. If everybody thinks that they're special, then no one is special. And that's why we don't have big rock stars anymore. That's why we don't have role models really anymore. That's why when we watch the Olympics, it's like, yeah, who cares? I'm just going to take a picture of me eating rice because my achievements are just as good. It's insane. The world's upside down. It's a destruction of our culture. So let's talk about some solutions to this, because it can be reversed. It's possible. And I think the first thing we need to do is go back to some basics. Children need, again, we got to start with the youth. Children need outside, unsupervised play. Evidence tells us that about 80% of parents say that they don't want their kids playing outside because of crime. It's a lie. The crime rates now are lower than they've ever been. They're definitely lower now than they were in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and 80s. So what's the excuse? Parents don't want to be parents, maybe? Is that the real excuse? I don't care what the excuse is. The result is that our kids are going nowhere. If you don't have children in unsupervised play, emphasis on the unsupervised, they start to learn antisocial behaviors. They have an increase in what's called sensory processing disorder. We'll keep it simple for today because I don't want the whole show to be about that. But in sensory processing disorder, you will see an increase in oversensitivity. And that means that they can't handle their emotions. They cry, whine, and complain about everything. And they can't handle basic life stressors. It's not just a sports problem. It's going to be an everything problem. The flip side to that is that there's an undersensitivity, which is just as worse. And what you'll see here is a child that always says that they're bored. They're looking for entertainment, nothing excites them, the world sucks in every way. Again, they have no interests. They don't attach to anything other than maybe themselves. And listen, you can't blame the kids. It's the parents. The parents needed to have helped along the child's development by allowing them unsupervised play. You know, when you do assessments on these types of kids, it seems like they have problems in every area. Anger, impulsivity, depression, anxiety, whatever, keep naming it, they're all there. But they certainly like to eat a lot, and they like to sleep a lot. Is that what we want for our kids? I don't think so. And again, how am I hooking this up with the Olympics? It's because people like this who don't care about anything, they don't care about people who are good at anything. And that's really it. The reason why the Olympics and the ratings are going down is because our culture is going down. My sister was over the other day, and we had a really good conversation. I don't know if it was for her, because I think I did most of the talking. But we were talking about how there would be 15 to 20 kids sometimes who would play man in the middle. We'd have somebody in the middle, and you try to throw the ball over, and the person in the middle would always try to get the ball. And we had like half the neighborhood playing. You know, and take like somebody like my sister, for example. She never did organized sports. But man, she was really athletic though. And I think that was kind of normal back then because everybody did sports, everybody played, everybody knew the basics of at least running and playing tag and baseball. You know, when my sister went into the military, I think she just breezed right through basic training, even though she wasn't in organized sports. I mean, she was in shape, and I think that was pretty normal for people back then. Take a look around now. Again, 66% of people are overweight, and the kids are even worse. You know, it's just amazing how we don't care about this kind of stuff. I was also looking back to when I go over to my cousin's house during the summer. And one of the things we did was we played these wiffle ball games and any type of baseball game. And what we would do is we would write down the roster of the Yankees. And if you went up to bat, you would be, you know, whatever place or position you were on the Yankees. And I'm going to go through this of why it's important for children to play. But one of them I want to talk about right now because I find it so interesting, that it actually increases hippocampus strength in your brain. It increases your memory. Now here's something. I'm going to test myself right now. Because we played baseball and we made believe that we were different guys on the team, watch this. Let's see if I can do it right now. The 1977 New York Yankees. You ready for this? Catcher, Thurman Munson. First base, Chris Chambliss. Second base, Willie Randolph. Third base, Greg Nettles. Shortstop, Bucky Dent. In the outfield, center field, fastest guy ever, one of the fastest guys ever, Mickey Rivers. Also in the outfield is a guy named Roy White. And of course, in, I believe it was right field, one of my favorite players of all time, who I did meet at one point at the gym. It was really good. I knew him for a couple of months, is Reggie Jackson. Okay, that's your starting Yankees team from 1977. I still remember. You want to know who the pitcher was? I was always Ron Guidry. I loved being, we all did, because Ron Guidry was great. Then you may believe if your arm was tired, you go into the bullpen. Who did you pick? Sparky Lyle. If you needed to get one guy out, you pick Goose Gossage. Simple. You want to see some more hippocampus strength? We also played basketball. We made believe we were certain players. Now I was from New York. My cousin's from New York. So we made believe we were the New York Knicks championship team. Understand that this is like 1972. Talking like 50 years ago now. You ready? Who's the center? Willis Reed. Who are the forwards? Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley. Guards, Earl the Pearl Monroe, and Walt Clyde Frazier. I could do it with all the other teams too, but I don't want to bore you with that. I'm just saying it works. You know, it's pretty simple. And back when the Olympics were during the summer, we would get together as friends, all the little kids, and we would do our own Olympics. I don't see any of that. I haven't seen any kids outside my house. None of them. Not in any neighborhoods actually doing anything. We used to make believe we were high jumpers. You know, we would try to like run from like one area to a car, but the short distance around the block would be the marathon. You know, we did everything. I don't see kids doing this these days. Yeah, I already gave you some of the negatives of what would happen, right? And it is happening. You can see it every day. If you don't believe me, I'm going to read this real quick because I think it's pretty amazing. It comes from the pediatricspublications.org. And it said children need to develop a variety of skill sets to optimize their development and manage toxic stress. Research demonstrates that developmentally appropriate play with parents and peers is a, get this, singular opportunity to promote the social, emotional, cognitive, language, and self-regulation skills that build executive function and a pro-social brain. Furthermore, play supports the formation of the safe, stable, and nurturing relationships with all caregivers that children need to thrive. Play is not frivolous. It enhances brain structure and function and promotes executive function, the process of learning rather than the content, which allows us to pursue goals and ignore distractions. So let me add just a little bit to that of what that's saying. Basically, it means that it will incredibly decrease the chances of ADHD. ADHD really didn't exist when I was a kid, for example. It also explains the difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. If you hear a child say that they don't want to go to school or they are taking certain classes because they care only about their grade, that means it's extrinsic motivation. It means that they're doing it for the wrong reason. Child play leads to intrinsic motivation, where kids do things for the sake and for the love of doing it. That's why they're so bored these days, these kids, because they can't find things to do that they actually want to do. They only do it because they think that they're getting a reward. Continuing. When play and safe, stable, nurturing relationships are missing in a child's life, toxic stress can disrupt the development of executive function and the learning of pro-social behavior. In the presence of childhood adversity, play becomes even more important. The mutual joy and shared communication and attunement that parents and children can experience during play regulate the body's stress response. Something else that didn't really exist when I was younger. Every kid having anxiety. Now you know why. There's the answer for you. And let's add depression to that as well. This clinical report provides pediatric providers with the information they need to promote the benefits of play and to write a prescription for play. Let me say that again. Write a prescription for play. That's how we can solve part of the problem, but we have to want to. If we can handle that part of unsupervised play, we can get to the next part, and I'll name that real quick because I don't want the show to get too long. But we need to increase youth sport participation. It's been going down since the 90s. One of the reasons is because parents are so afraid their little kids are going to get hurt. They don't want them to sweat. They don't want them to lose. Things like this. You hear these kids say this all the time. I'm afraid to fail. I don't want to lose. Unfortunately, that's a nice thing to say, and it does garner empathy from parents, but the problem is that that's not true most of the time. Most of the time when a kid tells you that they're afraid to fail, it means that they're entitled. It means that they think that they should win no matter what. It means that they think that they should be rewarded even if they don't practice. They think that they should be rewarded just because they show up. It's not fear of failure. It's the annoyance of not getting something that they think that they deserve no matter what. And they don't want to work hard for it because they haven't been taught. Youth sport participation. What does it do? It does a million things. Let's go over a few. It increases lifelong participation in sports and interest in sports and health in general. Lifelong friendships. It teaches you how to lose, which is important. Pretty much anybody can win, right? No problem. It's the losing. It's being able to handle the losses in life and to be able to come back and keep fighting. It does teach you how to win too, because you can't be conceited. And if you're actually in true competition, it's hard to win. You know, I see a lot of youth sports today, and they're not even following the rules. They're not even making them participate in actual competition. Everybody gets a trophy. That's ridiculous. I know that that's cliche, but it's so true. You know, I see this in lots of different types of things. Like, how can you have a football game without keeping score, a basketball game without keeping score, a soccer game without keeping score, a karate or a jiu-jitsu class without somebody throwing punches at you and actually trying to fight you? That's not really participating in sports. I don't know what you call it, but it doesn't teach winning and losing and working hard. Participation in sports also. The chance of relationship success as you get older goes up higher. Personal happiness goes up. Financial success obviously goes up. Teaches value of hard work, goal setting, how to be a leader, how to be a follower when you need to. Teaches you about conflict resolution. How often do you see that these days? Everybody's so narcissistic, they want their piece of the pie. If they can't get it, they leave. And it teaches you that being a loser is better than being a quitter. And you're not a loser if you keep trying. So basically, I wanted the show today to be a total recap of the Olympics and society, of why the ratings are going down. And overall, I think it gave you enough ways that we can improve on it, so we don't have the show being too negative. Overall, I think there's been a societal drift downward and a decline in people's care for health and fitness and caring about other people and working hard. And because of that, not as many people care about the Olympic Games. So hopefully you can take some of that to heart. If you have children, if you don't want to listen to me, listen to the experts here about how important play is. Get them involved in youth sports. If they're not competing when they're in a youth sport and they're not actually keeping score, complain about that. There needs to be a score. There's a score. There's competition every single day. There's a competition for finding a husband, finding a wife. There's competition for finding a good job, going to school. Everything is competition. There's nothing in this life that's not competition. It's good to know it now. Anyway, I hope you found some of that valuable. This is the Rise Above Project. Please put a like on it, share, whatever you have to do. And also, make a comment if you want. But don't be a coward. If you put that you don't like it, tell me why, and we can talk about it. I notice that sometimes. People put that they don't like it, and then they don't have a reason. We can't talk about it. Listen, don't be narcissistic like that. We're allowed to have a conversation. Thank you. I'll be back next time.